$6 tickets to a championship game. Let that sink in for a moment. You could buy a coffee at Starbucks or watch the supposed pinnacle of women's basketball. When the WNBA Finals rolled around without Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, something broke. Not just ticket sales, but the entire illusion that the league had been selling to fans and sponsors alike. What happened in those empty arenas exposed a truth so uncomfortable that players, executives, and media personalities are still scrambling to explain it away months later. The numbers don't lie, and they're absolutely brutal. When A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces faced off in what should have been a ratings bonanza, viewership collapsed by nearly 50% compared to games featuring Clark earlier in the playoffs. Arenas that had been packed to the rafters during Fever games suddenly looked like practice facilities with a handful of die-hard fans scattered across sections of empty seats. The visual was so bad that camera operators received instructions to shoot tight angles, avoiding wide shots that would reveal just how few people actually showed up to watch the so-called best players in the league compete for a championship. But here's where it gets really interesting. Before we dive deeper into this disaster, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whether you think the WNBA can survive without Caitlin Clark carrying the entire league on her back. Because what happened next is something nobody in the league office wants to talk about. The backlash started immediately on social media. Fans who had been called bandwagoners and fake supporters all season long suddenly had receipts. They posted side-by-side comparisons of packed Fever games versus the Ghost Town Finals. One viral post showed Gainbridge Fieldhouse during a regular season Indiana game. Every seat filled, fans standing and screaming, compared to a finals game where you could literally count the empty rows. The caption read, "Tell me again how it was never about one player." That single post got over 3 million views in 48 hours and sparked a conversation that league executives are still trying to shut down. A'ja Wilson, who had spent much of the season making subtle and not so subtle digs about Clark's popularity being media-driven hype, suddenly found herself playing to crowds that wouldn't fill a high school gymnasium. During warm-ups before Game 2, cameras caught her looking up at the empty sections, shaking her head in visible disbelief. This was supposed to be her moment. Her championship run, her validation as the face of the WNBA. Instead, it became a humiliating reminder that all the MVP awards and media praise in the world couldn't put butts in seats the way a 23-year-old rookie from Iowa could. The financial implications hit even harder than the embarrassment. Sponsors who had signed multi-year deals expecting the momentum from Clark's rookie season to continue started making phone calls. Quiet phone calls. The kind where contracts get renegotiated and clauses about viewership minimums suddenly become very important. Teams that had invested in upgraded facilities and marketing campaigns based on projected growth from the Caitlin Clark effect found themselves staring at half-empty arenas and plummeting merchandise sales. One insider, who spoke anonymously, said the panic in league offices was palpable, with executives holding emergency meetings to figure out how they let their golden goose slip through their fingers. What happened next would shock everyone who thought this was just a temporary dip in interest. The league tried everything to generate buzz. They pushed social media campaigns, offered promotional giveaways, even partnered with local businesses to bundle tickets with free car washes and tire rotations. Yes, you read that correctly. Championship Finals tickets came with free tire changes because that's apparently what it takes to get people to watch basketball without Caitlin Clark. The desperation was so obvious, it became a meme, with fans joking about what other services might get bundled with tickets. Free oil change with every playoff game? Buy one ticket, get your taxes done free? Dana Bonner, another veteran who had been vocal about respecting the pioneers and paying dues, looked visibly frustrated during post-game interviews. When asked about the sparse attendance, she snapped back with barely contained anger. "We work our whole lives for this moment," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "We deserve packed arenas. We deserve the energy and the love." The comment went viral, but not for the reason she hoped. Instead of sympathy, she got ratioed into oblivion by fans who reminded her of every dismissive comment she and other veterans had made about Clark throughout the season. The internet has a long memory, and it wasn't feeling particularly forgiving. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Just weeks earlier, when Caitlin Clark and the Fever were still in the playoffs, tickets were selling for hundreds of dollars. The cheapest seat available for a first-round playoff game in Indiana was $133. Not courtside, not lower bowl, the absolute cheapest ticket you could buy. Fast forward to the finals without Clark, and you could get in the door for the price of a fast food meal. The market had spoken, and it said something the WNBA establishment didn't want to hear. Social media exploded with reactions that ranged from schadenfreude to genuine concern about the league's future. One particularly viral video showed a content creator doing a live ticket search during the finals, watching in real time as prices dropped lower and lower. $6, he kept repeating in disbelief. "This is the championship, the finals. $6." The video got more engagement than official WNBA highlights from the actual games. That's not an exaggeration. That's a verified fact that should terrify everyone involved with the league's marketing department. Behind closed doors, the finger-pointing reached toxic levels. Players blamed executives for poor marketing. Executives blamed players for not being marketable enough. Marketing departments blamed social media algorithms. Everyone blamed everyone except the people who actually deserved it, the veterans and media personalities who spent an entire season undermining and dismissing the one player who was actually moving the needle. Asia Wilson, Cheryl Swoops, and others had made their feelings clear throughout Clark's rookie campaign. They questioned whether her popularity was deserved, suggested it was driven by racial bias, and generally treated the phenomenon of Caitlin Clark like an inconvenient temporary distraction rather than the lifeline it actually was. Now in 2025, as the league prepares for another season, the Caitlin Clark effect remains the elephant in every room. The Fever announced their season schedule, and within hours, road teams were already adjusting their arena capacities and ticket pricing structures for games against Indiana. It's not even subtle anymore. Everyone knows that a random Tuesday night game in Indiana will outdraw weekend matchups between other top teams. The league's competitive balance has been completely warped by one player's ability to actually get people to care. And here's something that hasn't been widely reported, but is absolutely true. Multiple WNBA teams have quietly lobbied the league office to adjust the schedule to give them more games against Indiana. Not because they think they can beat the Fever, but because those are the only games where they can actually sell tickets at reasonable prices. Think about how absurd that is. Professional basketball teams are begging for more opportunities to play against a specific opponent because they literally cannot fill their arenas otherwise. That's not a league. That's a traveling circus with one main attraction. The Sophie Cunningham addition to the Fever for 2025 added another layer to this story. Cunningham, who spent years with the Phoenix Mercury building a reputation as a tough, physical player, made the move to Indiana in the off-season. The immediate speculation was obvious. She wanted to be part of the only team that actually matters in terms of fan engagement and marketability. Playing alongside Caitlin Clark means playing in front of actual crowds, getting actual media coverage, and being part of something that extends beyond the tiny bubble of hardcore WNBA fans. Cunningham is a smart player who read the room and made the business decision that every other player in the league should be studying. But let's talk about what nobody wants to acknowledge publicly. The WNBA Finals disaster wasn't just about attendance or ratings or ticket prices. It was about the complete collapse of a narrative that the league and its media allies had been pushing for years. The narrative that said women's basketball didn't need stars, it needed respect for the collective. The narrative that said real fans appreciated the fundamentals and the history, not flash and personality. the narrative that said the league was growing steadily and sustainably, without relying on any one individual. Caitlin Clark's absence from the finals didn't just hurt ticket sales, it exposed all of those narratives as complete fiction. A'ja Wilson is an incredible basketball player. That's not up for debate. She's skilled, accomplished, and by any objective measure, one of the best to ever play in the WNBA. But skill doesn't equal star power, and accomplishments don't automatically translate to fan engagement. The harsh reality that Wilson and others are still struggling to accept is that being great at basketball is not the same as being someone people want to watch play basketball. Caitlin Clark has both. She's an elite talent who also happens to have that indefinable quality that makes casual fans become invested fans. The league had that gift dropped in their lap, and instead of embracing it, they let jealousy and resentment poison the well. The financial projections for 2025 tell the story better than any think piece ever could. Sponsorship deals that were signed in the euphoria of Clark's rookie season are now being audited and renegotiated. Television contracts that looked brilliant when ratings were spiking are now looking like potential albatrosses if viewership continues to crater for non-fever games. The WNBA had a chance to build something sustainable on the foundation that Clark provided. Instead, they're back to square one, hoping that lightning strikes twice and another transcendent talent comes along who the veterans won't immediately try to tear down. Here's a question that should keep Commissioner Kathy Engelbert up at night. What happens if Caitlin Clark gets injured? Not trying to jinx anything, but it's a legitimate concern. Clark has already missed a few games this season due to minor injuries, and every time she sits out, the league holds its collective breath. Because everyone knows that without her on the court, the entire house of cards collapses again. A league that is completely dependent on the health and availability of one player is not a league, it's a hostage situation. And right now, the WNBA is being held hostage by its own inability to create multiple stars who can actually move the needle. The irony is almost too perfect. For years, WNBA veterans complained about lack of respect, lack of coverage, lack of financial investment. Then Caitlin Clark shows up and brings all three in abundance. And instead of capitalizing on it, instead of riding that wave to new heights, the established players and their media allies spent the entire season trying to diminish her impact. They got their wish in the finals. They got to play without the Clark circus, without the media obsession, without the bandwagon fans. And it turns out that playing in front of empty seats for $6 tickets is exactly what the league looks like without her. Social media polls during the finals told the story in stark terms. One prominent account asked followers whether they would watch the finals matchup. 4% said yes. 4%. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. 96% of respondents said they had no interest in watching the championship series without Clark and the Fever involved. Those numbers should have triggered immediate emergency meetings at the highest levels of league management. Instead, the official response was basically to pretend everything was fine and hope nobody noticed the empty arenas. Dana Bonner's comment about deserving packed arenas became a rallying cry for critics of the league's handling of the Clark phenomenon. Deserve has nothing to do with it. Professional sports is entertainment, and entertainment is about giving people what they want to see. Fans wanted to see Caitlin Clark. They wanted to see her shoot from the logo, thread impossible passes, and generally do things that made basketball fun to watch. What they didn't want was to be lectured about respecting pioneers or told that their interest was somehow illegitimate because it was focused on one player. The WNBA had a chance to meet fans where they were and build from there. Instead, they chose gatekeeping and resentment. The league's television partners are having their own come-to-Jesus moment about all of this. ESPN and other networks signed deals expecting the ratings trajectory from Clark's rookie season to continue. When those numbers cratered for the finals, uncomfortable conversations started happening. Networks don't care about narratives or who deserves what. They care about advertising revenue, and advertising revenue is driven by viewership. If the WNBA can't deliver eyeballs without Caitlin Clark on the screen, then the value of those television contracts drops dramatically. And if the value of television contracts drops, then the entire economic model of the league is in jeopardy. Before we wrap this up, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because we're going to be following this story all season long. Drop a comment and let us know whether you think the WNBA learned its lesson or if we're going to see the same patterns repeat themselves in 2025. The most damning evidence of how badly the league mishandled this situation came from an anonymous player survey that leaked in the offseason. Multiple players admitted privately that they were frustrated with how the Clark situation was handled, but felt they couldn't speak up publicly without being labeled as traitors to the veteran establishment. Young players saw what was happening, understood that Clark was bringing attention and money that would benefit everyone, but were pressured to stay silent while veterans undermined the Golden Goose. That kind of toxic culture doesn't just hurt in the short term, it creates long-lasting damage that will take years to repair. The comparison to other sports and their transcendent stars is unavoidable. When Tiger Woods emerged in golf, the sport didn't spend time debating whether he deserved the attention or whether fans should appreciate the history of the game more. They embraced the moment, rode the wave, and used his popularity to grow the entire sport. When LeBron James entered the NBA, veterans didn't spend press conferences questioning whether his hype was justified. They recognized that a rising tide lifts all boats. The WNBA had its Tiger Woods moment. It's LeBron James moment, and the response from the establishment was to question whether the tide was rising too fast. Looking ahead to the rest of 2025, the league faces a critical decision point. They can continue pretending that the finals disaster was a fluke, that attendance and ratings will magically recover, that A'ja Wilson and other veterans will suddenly develop the star power to carry the league. Or they can accept reality, build the entire marketing strategy around Caitlin Clark and the Fever, and use that foundation to gradually elevate other players and teams. One approach leads to sustainable growth. The other leads to more $6 championship tickets and empty arenas. The tragedy of the WNBA Finals disaster is that it was completely avoidable. If the league had embraced Clark from day one, if veterans had welcomed the attention instead of resenting it, if media personalities had focused on growing the pie instead of fighting over slices, the finals could have been a celebration. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when ego and jealousy override common sense and business reality. A'ja Wilson and Dana Bonner are incredible players who deserved better than playing in front of empty seats. But they also contributed to creating the environment that led to those empty seats. Actions have consequences, and the consequence of spending a season undermining your league's biggest star is that nobody shows up when she's not playing. The question now is whether the WNBA can recover from this self-inflicted wound. Can they rebuild the momentum that Clark generated? Can they convince casual fans who were turned off by the negativity to give the league another chance? Can they create an environment where the next transcendent talent doesn't get torn down by jealous veterans? The answers to those questions will determine whether the WNBA becomes a sustainable major sport or remains a niche product that depends entirely on one player to generate interest. Based on how they handled the finals disaster, there's not a lot of reason for optimism. But stranger things have happened in sports. Maybe, just maybe, the league learned its lesson. The $6 tickets suggest otherwise.